So space news is everywhere. If your friends are anything like mine, they've been regaling you with what they've learned about this week or the previous week in space. Similarly, space innovations are everywhere. US companies are transporting astronauts to space and back safely. US companies are transporting astronauts and tourists to space and back safely. And young people are also working on a number of these missions. But to me, do you know what the best part is? The best part is that one of our best kept secrets in the space sector is now being clear for everyone to see, which is that space is a multidisciplinary phenomenon where everyone can play. What do I mean by that? Well, satellites are critical to telecommunications. We might be getting 6G from space. Satellites are critical to regenerative agriculture, from crop yield predictions to space weather. Satellites are critical to global health through telemedicine. Satellites are critical to sustainability through our work with orbital debris mitigation. Satellites are also critical to climate change as we help to bolster the monitoring of climate change. And soon, the way I see it, every company might very well be a space company. That's the sector you're in. There is a lot of opportunity and a lot of talents that are required for us to move space and shape the future of space for the next 100 years. And it may seem like the sector is established. You may not feel like a pioneer. But if you think about where we are likely to go in space, most of the technologies that we need have not been dreamed up yet. Most of what will be written about in 100 years of space will be built by you within the next decade or two. That's what makes me get up in the morning and roll up my sleeves and try to shape the future of space. I've been doing that for 17 years now. I started precisely 2 weeks after Cassini, the spacecraft, inserted itself into Saturn's orbit. And my job was, as a computer scientist, calibrating data from the Cassini plasma spectrometer. We were sniffing around for a few elements and found some. And that's when I decided that I wanted to build hardware, and I wanted to build spacecraft. And that's what I did. I built a number of them. Some I'm very proud of. One is a global precipitation measurement mission, which you may have heard of. It predicts precipitation, it predicts hurricanes, it saves lives. Worked on spacecraft that study exoplanets, spacecraft that also study supernova and conduct research at the International Space Station. And after building a number of these spacecraft, I moved from an engineer to a manager of managers, and now to the world of policy. And what gets me excited is what will happen in the next decade or two. And the reason I'm excited is because whenever I feel a sense of a pivot or a strong interest in something else, it always ties back to space. I'll give you 2 examples. I was interested in food security and wanted to know why food deserts still existed and how to make our food systems more efficient. And I quickly realized that if we made food ubiquitous on this planet, then we would have more tools to be able to grow food in extreme climates, which is what we need in space. The second example ties into hands-on work. So I built large spacecraft and then built small spacecraft, and then thought, well, especially given the burgeoning world of satellite constellations we've got going on, well, why don't we have robots assemble or build these satellites for us? What would that look like on orbit? So I'm working to ensure that these ideas and concepts come to fruition. What will you do? What will be your mark in space? This is a very revolutionary time for space because there's some of you in this room who work for companies that are changing access to space. Some of you in this room will be responsible for my children and yours going to space on a field trip in a decade or two. That's where we are, and it's game-changing, and when we read history, it reminds me of the stories we hear of the Apollo program. There were young people like you who worked on Apollo and landed the first man on the moon, and I look forward to following your careers and seeing what you innovate and build and develop in the next decade or two. I know some of you are already working with other nations and governments because you care deeply about climate change, and you understand that a lot of nations now see the need to be an authority on climate and the oceans and space. And we need a lot of talent, not just engineers. We need artists, we need designers, we need architects, we need space lawyers, space doctors, space nurses. We also need aerospace-trained senators. So let me leave you with my hope for our future. It's a world where one of you starts a robotics company that assembles the next telescope entirely in space. It's a world where the urban gardeners amongst you start an agricultural company that builds and grows food in space. It's a world where you all as space experts advise financial companies on the burgeoning space economy. It's also a world where some of you build an equatorial spaceport that would transport humans and cargo to space more efficiently. There's a lot of work to do in space. There's a lot of talent that's needed. And why this is critical, why all of this work that needs to be done is critical, is because when people understand that most of their daily existence is tied to space, when there is an understanding that their phone service, their satellite TV, their weather, their infrastructure, and by that I mean power grids, water networks, transportation network systems, come from satellites that are critical to their lifestyles, then we would have children naturally interested in STEM education. So what will you do? How will you take up room? And which of you is building the space hotel we were promised 30 years ago? Thank you.